Mark Crickle, Technical Practice Manager here at Planet Technologies, bringing you another technical update. This is a monthly video that I do to just talk about the Microsoft Data Platform and the Azure Development Stack. And the first thing I just want to mention really quickly is what's going on behind me here. As you can see, the walls are somewhat painted. In the spirit of application development, I decided that for my home office, as we're moving here, I would do everything in 2-week sprints. So the electrical, the paint work, the decorating, all those types of things. And this sprint, I am actually ahead of schedule. It's just to edge out all of the door casings and the ceiling with this beautiful gray color. So it's a good argument for me to explain to the wife why I can relax until the next sprint starts. I'm not sure that she's going to exactly see it that way, but moving on, let's jump right into DevOps. I wanted to take a few moments and talk about Azure DevOps Artifacts and why you may like to know more about it. In the past, I talked a little bit about what it is, but I find as we're talking to customers, a lot of the conversations lend themselves to work item tracking, Kanban boards, and the continuous integration and deployment capabilities. And I thought that I would cover artifacts because it's kind of a little bit less covered of a topic. And what it is a centralized package store with feeds to host and control permissions. And the idea here would be that your organization is developing binaries that they want to publish packages to the organization privately, or to use a cached packages store from NPM, NuGet, or Maven. So if for any reason there's an issue with the public package feed, either because of availability or something happens with a downstream package that gets pulled, you now have a cached version in your own environment to work with. There are permissions as a part of the package store that allow you to either contribute to it or to simply consume from it. And adding the package store to Visual Studio is simple. Once you have a feed set up, you simply would right-click on the solution in Visual Studio and then go to Manage Packages for Solution and put in the URL to your feed. The other nice thing is keeping in mind that as it relates specifically to NuGet packages, a lot of mistakes that developers make working with NuGet and DevOps initially is that they want to check in their entire dependencies folders, which makes check-in and check-out extremely painful because of just simply the size, and also can create issues around version dependency issues. So it's recommended that you do not do that, and you do want the ability to have these packages across your projects and build into your continuous integration deployment pipeline. By using the artifact repository, you can take advantage of building them from the artifact store as your project is going through the deployment process. So you kind of get the best of both worlds there. One of the things that is a new capability I have to quickly mention is the universal package. It's a new capability that is for storing shared binaries or artifacts. So your installers, your data sets, CSV files. We're working on a project right now where we do have CSVs that are feeding test projects. So you can store those in your package feed and be able to share that across projects, which is an awesome capability that you might not otherwise have. People will store in SharePoint or Teams or somewhere else to kind of keep that stuff centralized. So that's a quick primer on artifacts. I hope you get a chance to play with it. While we're talking about Azure DevOps, I just wanted to mention a few updates from sprints 147 to 149. Restore deleted pipelines for up to a 30-day period. I believe I mentioned deleted pipelines probably on the last call or the call before that. Proxy support for artifacts related tasks to provide better support for artifacts for on-premise scenarios. and delegate administration for Azure Artifacts feeds, so that way you're not having a single person kind of managing that. So it's a good thing we talked about artifacts earlier, because there are 2 new capabilities specifically around it. The other great new feature that I want to mention is in version 140, Sprint 148, the public preview of the Azure DevOps CLI. So I think this is a fantastic announcement. With the CLI, you can do things like manage your work item tracking, manage queries, or add or edit team projects or team settings, or administer permissions. So you can do this with all of the major workloads. They're all included. There's limited capabilities based on the workload. It is in preview, but it touches boards, artifacts, repos, pipelines, and administrative capabilities. So that one is probably hard to top. However, Sprint 148 and 149 did bring in a few other capabilities, both for boards and for GitHub support. The Azure PowerShell AZ module capability inside of Azure Pipeline, so now you can run AZ commands through the pipeline process. And there was a new Slack integration capability. So for those of you that are using Teams, you may or may not be aware, and if you're not aware, you definitely have to check it out, of a capability that allows you to see work item commits and also code commits in your team channel, and now you would have that capability for Slack as well. So that's a great welcome addition for Slack users, that is. All right, move on to Visual Studio and sort of dev topics in general. Microsoft did release the release candidate for Visual Studio 2019 with a release date of April 2nd. It's right around the corner. I actually feel like the time frame for that has greatly diminished. Recall the days when there would be multiple release candidates over a period of time. There were a few like UI tweaks. There was a number of security sort of updates as part of the release candidate, but nothing of any significance. April 2nd, though, there will be a developer conference. I encourage you to check it out. We certainly will try to keep our eyes on it. If not, then at least the announcements that come out of it, and share it on the next video as well. There wasn't too much in the .NET Core space. One slight note, specifically containerization of .NET Core images. Microsoft did announce the past month that all future .NET Core images, namely 3.0, Preview 3, and on, will be exclusively published in the Microsoft Container Registry and syndicated to Docker Hub. So for anyone that's following that premise, it was about a year ago that Microsoft announced that their intention was to create their own Hub CDN using Azure services for syndicating container images across Docker Hub, Red Hat Container Catalog, and Azure Marketplace. And so essentially this is for those of you in the .NET space, .NET Core space. This is hitting right now. Also from the .NET Foundation, in March they have a new announcement around some updates that they're making to their site. I'd encourage you to check out their update, but one of the things I pulled out of it that I thought was kind of interesting was they have a new workshop site. They've kind of refreshed it and added a couple of things. You'll see the URL in the slide here. It's presentations.netfoundation.org # or hashtag workshops. So if you are in this position of evangelizing .NET things, or you are simply wanting to go out and check out some presentations, they have a new one that they've added around Blazor. Go out and check it out. You can actually follow right along with it, or you can, like one of the areas I think is really cool is you can take the presentations and use them internally to evangelize in your .NET team. So of course, because it is the .NET Foundation and because it is open source, they will take any contributions that you will provide for them. Since we're talking about development in general, allow me to share two other quick, potentially more obscure announcements regarding Azure. First, premium blob storage just went into public preview. That sentence, by the way, is it's very hard to say, premium blob storage went into public preview. It's a bit of a tongue twister. The idea of the storage is to provide low latency and high performance storage for scenarios that require something a little bit better than what's offered in standard. So think of IoT or analytics or potentially video processing, anything that's highly disk sensitive. That would be a case where the premium blob block storage would come into play. They meaning Microsoft, claim that it is very cost effective, and it's should be less expensive for workloads with very high transaction rates. So I encourage you to check it out. Second, and kind of interest to me personally, since I do dabble in some game development and I also enjoy Power BI, was an announcement around Microsoft GameStack. It's a brand new branded service from Microsoft. And although it's not my intention to really talk a lot about game development on this particular video series, I thought it was neat to see that Microsoft's putting together a new set of APIs and services around it. And two of the technologies that I do work with, Power BI and Unity, are a part of that stack. Either they were named explicitly or somewhat implicitly. I'm just anxious to see what that means for Power BI developers or Azure Data Stack developers who want to start bringing analytics and insights into the game world. They can now take their skills into other places, which I think is super cool. And of course, from the Unity perspective, I think outside of even development in state local government, where we do a lot of our work, and even in higher ed, there's definitely a place for Unity in situations like augmented reality. So definitely some cool things to keep your eye on there. Lastly, let's just talk a moment about Azure Data Platform. With regards to Data Platform for the month, SQL Server running in IS scenarios can now take advantage of Azure Backup for SQL Server virtual machines, which Microsoft describes as an enterprise-scale zero infrastructure backup service. If you're currently using SQL in Azure virtual machines, this is for you. It would be something that is cost-effective and hopefully reduces the amount of work and labor to stand up your own backup solutions for Azure. It hit general availability about a week or two ago. It allows for RPO times as low as 15 minutes, offers auto protection, so as new databases are being added to your SQL Server, they're automatically picked up and protected, and centralized management around backup and restore. The data is stored in Azure Recovery Services vaults, so you're going to get advantage of the protection for encrypted database and RBAC, and you also get to take advantage of SQL Server Management Studio's integration and interoperability with always-on availability groups. This service does support backup compression as well. Microsoft does claim that Azure CLI support for the service is available, but keep in mind it is a price service as your data is stored in the cloud. I believe it's around $34, $35 per month plus your storage cost based on the street pricing calculator. Lastly, we talked last month about Azure Data Studio, and the month of March brought a number of new features and some bug fixes. And one that I really wanted to highlight quickly because it's awesome for developers is the PowerShell extension that was added to the IDE, mirroring that which is currently in Visual Studio Code. Using this extension, you now get the beauty of PowerShell IntelliSense, syntax highlighting, reference finding, and interactive console support, just to name a few features that are part of that extension. All that's right in the Azure Data Studio UI. And so with the latest capability, now your T-SQL developers and your engineers who are otherwise using the product can do their Azure commandlets in PowerShell without having to leave the application and go somewhere else. So, if they can have a one-stop shop, why not, right? All right, well, with that, I'm going to end our video for today. I want to thank you so much for your attention, and as always, if there's anything that Planet Technologies can help you with, or you just want to chat with me about any of these topics, feel free to hit me up.